You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering New Hampshire. So, Kenzie,
Yes, Lauren.
let's try this again and let's get scary.
Take
We are
5,278.
oh my God. I told Mackenzie she was never allowed to record in a different location because we have had so many issues trying to record over, like, in long distance.
I keep checking all the systems to make sure
They're
all
everything's how it
on the
needs to
right
be.
setting.
We're hoping, just fingers crossed, praying to the podcast gods that this works how it needs to.
It's okay. In writing our description for the episode we technically haven't recorded yet, I start off with saying we had some technical difficulties this week. So,
Oh man, that's an understatement.
oh yeah.
So, fun fact. Okay, last year we recorded New Hampshire and it went out on July 6th. This year, we're recording New Hampshire and it's going out on July 5th. So that's cool. And then second, this is your 1 year official podcast anniversary.
Oh, yay. Oh,
So it was our last New Hampshire episode. You announced you were officially going to be the podcast host.
I feel like I'm not a newbie anymore.
No longer a newbie.
No longer I'm a newbie. I even figured out Alitu and how to do all that.
You have done so much since you started, and it's just been so amazing.
Oh, shucks. Well, I am enjoying every second of it. Every time I do it, I'm like, if I could just do this full time.
Oh,
Someone
God.
wants to pay us a living wage to do this full time. No.
That would really make us so happy. Oh, yeah, that's important too.
Yeah. Or at least enough money so that we could pay for our own health insurance. Either one is fine.
Yeah, we're cool with either of those options.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited because this Friday, I somehow convinced my mom to go on it's called Mummies, Murder, and Mayhem.
And it's like a tour?
Yeah, so we're on like a trolley. And which is great because that means no walking.
Right.
Which is great for me and mom. We get a complimentary drink.
Oh my God. Like any drink or is it like a specialty drink?
I don't know. I think it might just be beer or wine, but I'm not sure.
Well, still so fun.
Well, so when we were looking at the tickets, I was looking for something to do because by that point I was like finishing up my homework. I was finishing up this and I was like, I want to go do something. I want to go out of the house. So I'm looking things up to do and I see this and I'm like, oh my God, this would be so much fun. And then my mom was like, what? I was like, you're not going to want to do this. And so I just read the title to her. She was like, oh, see? But we're just on a trolley and it's not just like, oh, hey, this place has like some haunted history to it. It's also like murder. And so they'll act out like the murder. They'll act out whatever it is too.
Oh my gosh.
And I think what really made it solid for me was we're reading the reviews because I was saying to my mom, I was like, well, it's kind of expensive. So I really want to make sure that we
That's good.
Want to do this. And it was only stopping at one place. And we're like, how is this an hour and a half if you're only passing by one place?
Mm-hmm.
So then we went to go look at the reviews and it had a lot of good reviews, a lot of good reviews. A lot of people said they found it entertaining. And I was like, okay, well, maybe they go the long way.
Mm-hmm.
And this one person commented and something about it being too historical. And they were like, that's the point. It's history.
It's a history tour.
Right. What did you expect it to be?
I love people like that. One time I was looking up reviews to for our beach vacation and someone posted, they're like, I didn't really enjoy my stay. My view from my room was just the dunes and it was just not what I wanted. Well, they had booked the dune view room.
So one of the people
I was like, what are you expecting if you booked dune view?
So one of the first comments was like, "We had a ticket for this day and we showed up and like no one ever came and blah 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 blah." And the person commented on it. It's like, "We've already told you, like, I don't know why you're commenting this because your reservation was for June 30th. We
Oh
do
my
this
god.
every other Friday. That was what your reservation was for. Like, we
How
did not screw up."
people are I can't.
I know.
I love when businesses though, like, clap back at people, where the
Mhm.
person will say, like, a bad review and the business is like, "Actually"
Yeah, which both of them were justified. I was like, "Okay, so the only bad reviews were not even
bad
like."
reviews. Right.
Right, credible.
Right.
So, very excited to
Oh
do
my
that.
god, well, I cannot wait to hear how that goes.
Oh, I will have all the deets.
And I'm actually very excited to hear how your mom how your mom likes it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see that too.
Yeah,
I said to her, I was like, I don't think anything pops out because I wouldn't do that either.
I doubt things do.
No, I don't think they pop out because it's also like for kids, like kids can go.
Oh, yeah, then absolutely nothing pops out.
Yeah. And I was like, we don't have to go inside anywhere. And even if we did, you and I, we can sit on the bus because fuck that. We're not going inside.
Ugh, the 2 peas in a pod. Your favorite food.
I know, right? See, I love that saying, but I'm like, can we like, is there something else that's in like a casing?
I don't think I can think of any other things that would be like 2 peas in a pod. Huh. If anyone knows of one, let us
Two
know.
peanuts in a shell.
Oh, cute.
2 peanuts
Alright,
in a shell.
Mackenzie, you wanna tell us about New Hampshire?
All right, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's constitution is the second oldest among the states. It was originally named North Virginia, which I think we should have OG Virginia, then West, and then New Hampshire can't be North Virginia. We got to give that to
Mm-mm.
Maryland because it's literally right above us.
New
We're
Hampshire?
right.
New
We
Hampshire's
can't.
way, way up
We
there.
have to give North Virginia to Maryland, and then New Hampshire will be New Virginia,
Okay.
and then New York will be York, Virginia, and then Rhode Island is going to be Virginia Island.
Oh, of course, of course.
And then Connecticut will be Virginia Cut.
What about Pennsylvania?
Virginia Penn.
Okay, and New Jersey?
Um,
Virginia.
no. That's dumb.
Oh, because all the other ones make so much sense.
They do. Jersey, Virginia. We'll just call it Jersey, Virginia.
Yes, very
And then
unique.
Massachusetts would be Mass, Virginia.
Mhm.
And then Maine would be Maine, Virginia. And we can give them Maine, Virginia because that's fine. But
And it has the
then
E.
right. And ours will be OG, Virginia.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
Or we could just be Virginia since that is just pristine.
Yeah, that works too.
And Vermont can be Virginia.
But spelled instead of VIRVER.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to make it into existence.
Manifesting. We've been apparently really good at that lately.
Yeah. In all the wrong directions too.
So their motto is live free or die.
That's really intense.
Those are your two options.
You live
Nothing
free
else.
or you die.
That's it. Has no income tax, which is nice.
That is nice.
Skiing is a state sport.
I
know, after
that for some reason.
I was just about to say that because after my story, I would have said like hiking.
Oh.
And I think that's maybe because the only person I know from New Hampshire is like super into hiking.
Yeah, so not biased at all for why it should be hiking.
And my story is all about hiking. So I'm like, that's all they do there is they just hike.
They just hike. They don't ski. It's just hiking.
No, they just climb up the mountain and then climb back down. So the world's biggest meatball can be found here.
Gross.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like a real meatball?
No, I don't know.
Like edible meatball?
I don't know. We'll have to look that up afterwards and inform everyone.
Yeah. So behind Maine, New Hampshire is the second most forested. Forested.
Yes. Nailed it.
State. Thank you.
Yes.
Mhm. New Hampshire is the only state where seatbelts aren't mandatory.
Danger.
Danger. Per capita, New Hampshire has the second highest beef consumption in the country.
Which would make sense with their giant meatball.
I missed that last time. We can have some appreciation because the first potato that was grown in the United States was planted in New Hampshire in 1719 in Londonderry Common Field. Londonderry. Okay.
Either way, we give our appreciation to Londonderry or Londonderry.
Although they didn't hold that title because Idaho came in and said, hold my beer.
We are the potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Hold my vodka.
You're on a roll. That's good.
Thank you.
The largest land mammal in New Hampshire are moose, which is not right. Moose just seem like I figured they were big, but they just seem like they should not be that big.
No, nothing should be that big. Well, elephants, it's okay. But moose, no.
I think it's different for elephants because an elephant is just over large.
They're just wide. They're big all over. But
and
moose are
giraffe, we knew were really tall.
Yes. But moose, you think of them as the size of a deer. Or at least I do.
Well, I had a bunch of stuffed animal moose. I was obsessed with mooses for a while. I know that's not a real word, but it's...
I do remember you had a lot of stuffed animals that were a moose.
Yes. I think they're adorable.
Ooh, hold on. Let me show you something.
Okay. Oh,
it's
so cute. It's got a little sweater.
Joe got it for me. His name is Franklin.
So a few years ago, one of my 5th grade classes, these 2 boys, they were hilarious. They were best friends and they would just make us crack up all the time. One of them called me Nil the Pill just because it rhymed. He had no idea what being a pill meant, when you said that to somebody. Was it at the end of the year? Or maybe when it was spring break, but when he came back, he had gotten me this little pen and it was a pill.
Oh.
It's so cute. And then at the end of the year, he got me a little glass moose. It's super tiny.
Cute.
It's that big.
That's cute.
Oh, so cute. And then in Canada, in Nova Scotia, they have a store called Moose Club or something like that.
Cute.
And it has a moose.
Cute.
And see, what's great about moose and otters is that they live in the same region.
So we could go to one region and see both moose and otters.
Mm-hmm, because they both live in the cold north forests. Now we'd have to go to the other side where moose are.
That's okay. We could do that. We can
Okay,
travel.
cool. Okay. We'll ride our moose to the water to see the otters.
Perfect. I'll name one Franklin. And look, his little sweater has little moose on it.
Oh, that's so cute.
Okay.
So moose average about 1,000 pounds and can stand 6 feet tall at the shoulders.
Meaning their head is even taller.
Yeah. Their front legs are actually longer than their hind legs, which help them jump over things in the forest.
I wonder if that's a common thing they do.
I was just going to say, I feel like they should just step.
Yeah.
But maybe not. So it is considered good luck if the state insect lands on you, and their state insect is a ladybug, which is
I'd be okay
also
if the ladybug landed on me.
Delaware's insect.
Interesting. A lot of people steal state things from each other.
Yeah. And we had ladybugs this year in my classroom. We raised them.
Aw. Do they have names?
We named them Lady George because we didn't know if they were girls or boys.
Right.
So
love the inclusivity.
We're trying to keep it, gender neutral-ish.
Love it.
Lady George. Jumanji was filmed in Keene, New Hampshire back in 1995.
Oh my gosh. When I went to Nora's bachelorette party, we were opening all the drawers just to see what was in there. And one of the drawers was their game drawer. And one of them was Jumanji. And I was like, no, we're not going to play that.
I've seen the movie. I know what happens.
I know how it ends. We're good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The first free public library in the United States was established in Peterborough and opened in 1833.
Ooh.
Betty and Barney Hill, 2 natives from Portsmouth, became the first known case of alien abduction in New Hampshire. And there is now a marker at the alien abduction site.
It's a weird story. I did
Have we
not cover it,
covered it?
obviously. No.
Okay.
Because it's like, at least I know it, and it's pretty well known. Maybe not
Mm.
for you, but for most people, it is well known. And, like, we try to do lesser known things.
Yes. Which is always why I double check with you.
Yes, exactly. If I don't know it, no one knows it.
Right.
Just kidding.
Well, that's my radar anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So H.H. Holmes was born in Gillimanton, New Hampshire. And you can listen to that story on our previous, very first Illinois episode.
Correct.
Number 1.
Because while he was born in New Hampshire, he committed all of his bad stuff in Illinois.
Yes. He once wrote that he was born with the devil in me. I was born with the evil standing as my sponsor beside the bed where I was ushered into the world, and he has been with me since.
He's just a
Again,
creepy guy.
If you want to hear more about H.H. Holmes, listen to our first Illinois episode, available wherever you get your podcast.
Did you say Illinois again?
Probably.
Mackenzie.
Then they should take the S off. That's all I'm saying.
And then we should take the K off of your last name.
Yeah, we should. It's fucked that it's there.
Silent letters are stupid.
Absolutely. But it's also stupid when someone pronounces them because I'm like, bitch, you don't say knife.
And you also don't say Illinois.
You should. If they wanted it to be silent, they should have put an X. Like Beau, B-E-U-X. You know how the French put X at the end of things and it's silent?
No, I did not know that at all, actually.
Your last name is French.
I know. And my married last name is also French.
Yeah, that's going to be cataracts for the rest of your life, by the way.
Other people say cadet, carrot. We're okay.
Oh, I'm purposefully saying it wrong.
I know.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. The first snowmobile was invented in Ossipee.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's like it wanted to be Mississippi, but then didn't want to copy it. So then it was just like Ossipee.
Ossipee.
I would like to live there.
Oh, what was that other place you really like the name of?
Topeka.
Ah, Topeka.
Ooh, and Yakima. I love Yakima. Yakima's good. That's great. Our friend Jacob. Oh, we got to do it like we did before. Happy birthday, Jacob.
Yeah, happy birthday.
We're recording on his birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah. And I call him Jacob. Okay. So the alarm clock was invented in 1787 by Levi Hutchinson in Concord. Tupperware was created in 1947 by Earl Silas Tupper, a tree surgeon.
Ooh.
Interesting. Didn't know that trees needed a surgeon.
Well, they're living, so I guess it makes sense.
I know that, but they don't have like organs. They don't.
Yeah. They have limbs.
Okay. You were on a roll and then just.
They do have limbs.
No.
That's a real thing.
I know, but that one just wasn't as funny.
Just read the next fact.
Marilla Ricker made history as the first woman to attempt to vote in 1870 and the first to attempt to run for governor in 1920.
Hell yeah.
Go Marilla. Unless it's like Maria. Because you know how like in Spanish, the double L.
It could be. But there's no way to know because we don't know which,
Yeah. So Maurice and Richard McDonald, the co-founders of McDonald's, Adam Sandler, Seth Meyers, and that's it. From New Hampshire.
She skips over words like "and" that tell you that you're almost done with the list of things.
And then I come back and say them later. So the woman who wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb was from New Hampshire, but her name was not Mary. It was Sarah Josepha. And Uncle Sam.
I call Joe that a lot. I call him Josepha.
Josepha. That's funny. Uncle Sam, or Samuel Wilson, grew up in Mason, New Hampshire.
Wow, New Hampshire.
Are some fun facts about New Hampshire.
So fun.
Amazing. I had the best time.
10 out of 10 would return. Oh, and before we start, really fun. So whenever someone's like, oh, I need podcast recommendations, I always put ours in, and then I go to see, if anyone said anything. Someone said ours.
Really?
Oh, I was like, cool. Oh, I remember it was someone who was asking for recommendations, and I recommended it, and they liked it. So they've been listening.
Wow.
I
Hello,
know.
person.
I
That's so
know.
cool.
So I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, just so
wow.
cool." I know.
I always get excited when, like, we get, like, a new follower or a new like, because 'cause I'm
I
like,
do
"Oh my
too.
god.
I know,
Are
I
you
do
new?
too.
Hi, welcome."
But what we also don't like, the people
Okay.
who comment on things on Facebook or on Instagram, not on Instagram, YouTube, who say things like mean comments about how we're not journalists, we are just social media influencers. And to that, I want to say, never
God, I
once have we
wish.
said, yeah, never once have we said we were journalists. Never once have we said we were social media influencers. Never once have we told you any of those things. We have literally just
Also,
said that this is something we enjoy doing.
it's hard to take those comments seriously when they are not grammatically correct.
Right. They, whoever it was, tried to call us uneducated. And I was like, okay, if you want to say that, that's fine. But like, maybe make sure that your comment is
Mhm.
grammatically correct and spelled correctly before you call someone
Mhm.
else uneducated.
I think I read it, like, when you sent it to me. I kept
Multiple
scrolling
times.
back up to read it multiple
Right.
times because I was like, "I don't think I'm understanding what the person is saying."
No, either. I was like, I don't think you understand what you're saying. So what?
And I'm like, "I get it. We're not everybody's cup of tea, you know?
Some
Like,
people want to break their
they're"
phone in half when they listen to us.
right, whatever. Aggressive, but okay. But, like, I listened to one podcast, it's about serial killers, and they do just get right to the point. It's no conversation, it's strictly like,
Mhm.
"This is whatever," which is fine. I get why some people would just prefer that, like, I totally understand, but it's also like, I really like the BuzzFeed, like, I really like their commentary. I think it's funny. I
Yes.
think it, like, kinda adds to it,
And
and
I like when you
so
get a glimpse into the people's lives who you're listening to for hours a week.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. So, I'm not saying to be everybody's cup of tea, but it's just, I don't understand why you gotta be rude.
Right, if you don't like it, turn it off and go listen to something else.
Right,
You don't
and
need
it's
to
like,
spend time formatting a really poorly worded comment to tell us that you don't like us.
it's just you gotta remember that while you're hiding behind this computer screen and it's all digital, like, you don't know us personally, there's still people on the other side, so, like, you still gotta be kind.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I'm like, "Meh, I'm not gonna be loved by everyone, I don't care."
No, and that's totally fine, that's not I always tell my kids, I was like, "You don't have to like everybody in here. I am not gonna try to make you be friends with everyone, but no matter what, regardless of your feelings for them, you will be kind and you will be respectful."
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and adults, I have come to learn, are just big 3rd graders.
Yup, exactly.
So,
Alright.
that concludes our lesson time from Miss Nell. All right,
Hey, wanna
what
kick
you
it
talking
off?
about, Willis?
There we go, alright.
I feel like
Uh,
I need to come up with my own catchphrase because that's technically from a TV show. Like, it's not mine.
I have no doubt you'll come up with one.
Yeah,
I
I'll
have
try
faith.
some things out on you and we'll see your reaction and then I'll kind of gauge if that's the right one.
Alright, I love it.
Okay.
Alright, so I wanna start off by saying that I know this case will not include everything that is involved. There's
Mhm.
a lot that I will have to leave out because this case could easily be its own, like, multi-parter. It has a ton of information, too much to put into how we do our episodes. There's a great NHPR podcast called Brook that covers this case in depth. Oh, I'm covering the Brook murders. Helps to say that at the beginning. So that podcast covers this case in depth, like multiple parts, multiple seasons. They've been following the case, giving updates, really digging deep into absolutely everything.
Mhm.
So if you are just lacking some stuff from ours because I couldn't include everything, you can go listen to that and it'll give you a ton of information.
Yeah,
But
that's
with
good.
that, thank you. But with that being said, let's just jump right on in.
Let's do it.
So, Allenstown, located in Merrimack County, is a small, sleepy town with just over 4,300 residents. That's why when a hunter made a grizzly discovery in 1985, it shook this little town to its core. Bear Brook State Park is located in Allenstown and covers about 10,000 acres.
Damn.
I know, rightfully so, it is one of New Hampshire's largest parks.
Wait. Sorry, this is gonna sound like it's out of left field, but it's fine.
Okay.
I I forgot to tell you. Okay, so I was thinking about how earlier for the facts, it's like, oh, most of New Hampshire is covered with forests.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, 10,000 acres, like for New Hampshire, like that's got to be a lot. And then I, thought of things fitting inside other things. And for Delaware, I almost, there was, like, a whole bunch of, like, facts of, like, what can fit into Delaware or,
Oh
like, what
my
Delaware can
god.
fit into.
Oh my god. What this means is
Uh, I was like, "Oh my god." I don't know why I didn't end up going with that one, but, like, I forgot to
Ugh.
tell you that, so that's why. Side note.
So this really big amount of acres, it offers a lot, like camping, trails for hiking and biking, water activities, just a lot of outdoorsy stuff. I'm not even gonna go into what could probably fit there. Okay, so it's 1985, and Jesse Morgan and his friends were playing a game of hide and seek out in the woods. One of his friends ran up to him and said that they found a barrel out in the middle of the woods just off the trail. So, of course, being boys, they all went over to look at it, explore the barrel, kind of see what was going on with it. Morgan said it was slightly rusted and a dark blue. It was a blue 55-gallon steel drum, and it was just sort of sitting out there in the woods. He
Mhm.
said that one of his friends went over to the barrel and went to lift the top. When he did, he was hit with a smell that was, quote, absolutely putrid.
Mm.
Yeah. Another friend pushed the barrel over and it fell on its side. All of the boys jumped on their four-wheeler and booked it out of there before they could see what was in the barrel. Fast forward 4 months. New Hampshire police officer Ryan Montplaisir got a call from dispatch telling him to meet a hunter at the edge of the woods. The hunter came out of the woods looking very pale. He said to Montplaisir, quote, there's a barrel up in the woods, and I think there's some bones in there.
Ugh.
Upon truly looking into the barrel, police found the remains of an adult woman and a young girl, both wrapped in a plastic sheet, dismembered. A
Hmm.
later autopsy revealed that both had died from blunt force trauma. Their identities were unknown, and not being able to do anything right away, the two were given a small funeral. They were both buried in an Allentown cemetery with a tombstone that read, quote, here lies the mortal remains known only to God of a woman aged 23 to 33 and a girl child aged 8 to 10. Their slain body found, I know. Their slain bodies were found on November 10th, 1985 in Bear Brook State Park. May their souls find peace in God's loving care. So we
Babies.
have, I know, so we have a pretty young woman and then like a
Yeah.
baby child. So
Is it
obviously
her daughter?
we don't know yet. We have no idea what their identities are.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously an investigation kicked off after this drum was found. And this case was publicized all over the US and even went so far as to be publicized in some parts of Canada. This
Year was
came
this?
1985.
Alright, so they couldn't have done did they have DNA then, or was it just
Not
starting?
really. It was like kind of
Okay.
just in its very like infancy of DNA stuff. So, we'll get into that in a little bit, but we didn't have much
Okay.
at this time.
Okay.
So hundreds of leads came in for who these two victims could be, but they were never identified. Nothing at all came from like the ton of leads that came in. But one
Mhm.
man immediately came to the forefront as a suspect. His name was Robert Stephen. He had recently been arrested for sexually assaulting children.
Ugh.
He also had a criminal history that included burglaries. And most conveniently, he was living in a trailer park that was behind the wooded area where the barrel was found.
Okay.
So, kind of convincing
Highly
here.
suspect.
Yes. His house was searched and child pornography had been found with children as young as 18 months old.
Oh.
So, okay, I was listening to another podcast and they were saying that child pornography is technically no longer the correct term. It's something else because pornography implies consent, and obviously that isn't present in a case that like involves children.
Okay.
So,
I
I'm
mean, I
not
get it, but
right, I get it, but I'm not really sure what that new term is, but
right.
apparently it's not child pornography.
Okay.
So, anyhow, his
It's
neighbors
gross
were
either
in.
way.
Yeah, gross either way. So, anywho, his neighbors were interviewed. All of them had amazing things to say about this guy, that he was a nice guy who liked kids. They had, but like
Mm.
they thought it was in a good way. They had no idea about his whole other secret life. So, apparently, at one point, Stephen had told one of the kids he assaulted that if they told anyone, he would bury them under his house.
Oh my god.
So, of course, his house, inside and under, was searched, but absolutely nothing was found. He turned out to just be a red herring, and he was soon ruled out as a suspect.
What's that?
A red herring is kind of like something to throw off the lead way. It's just like
Okay.
something that isn't actually the suspect or in this case, the suspect, but it's just something that could have fooled people at the beginning.
Got it.
So their attention soon turns to the owner of the land where the barrel was found, Ed Gallagher. His
That
property was
wasn't their
off.
first.
Right. You would have thought, but I guess because sometimes people own like acres and acres and acres of land. You're not going to
Mhm.
know everything that's going on there. So I guess
That's
since they
true.
had no other leads, that's who they turned to. So his property was often described as a junkyard with trash all over and no organization in sight. He had also once owned a country store. There was a path that led from the country store to the place where the barrels were found. But the country store no longer stands there because at some point it had burned down, and he too
Hmm.
had lived in a trailer right behind his store. So he had some involvement with law enforcement beforehand. He had received many
Who is
summons.
this?
The Ed Gallagher, the owner of the property.
Oh, okay, okay.
So he had received many summons from a fridge that he had had on his property. So he was told multiple times by police to take the doors off of the fridge as it posed a risk to children who could get trapped inside, which just sounds
What?
very, yeah, I don't know.
Why
It
is that
sounds
his
very odd.
problem?
Right. And yeah, I don't know. But so, of course, he was questioned by police about the bodies found on his property, but he had no answers for them. He had no idea why they were on his property. He had no idea who would have come onto his property to put them there. Like, he just had no idea what was going on. But
Right.
without having the identities of those found, so the two found in the barrel, the police were unable to issue a search warrant to search his property. And unfortunately, without any leads, the case went cold and stayed cold for the next 15 years. Then Detective John Cody from New Hampshire State Police became intrigued with this case again in 2000 and started to wander the property where the first metal drum had been found. He wandered off the main path a little bit, and that is where, on May 9th, 2000, he came upon a second metal drum. This drum had been very close to the first, only about 300 feet from where the first had been found, but this one did not contain oil as one would expect in an oil drum. This one contained the remains of two young girls.
Oh no.
Police believe that it was connected to the first drum, but it was missed in the original investigation in 1985 due to it being located outside of the proximity of the initial crime scene. So the boys who had found the barrel had dragged it from one spot and kind of dragged it to where it
Oh,
ended up being found.
okay. So it wasn't in its original location.
Right. So they
Got
believe
it.
that they kind of roped off however much land for this crime scene. And then that is how they found out, like, we missed it in the first time because it wasn't in our crime scene. So an autopsy was done and it revealed that these two girls were estimated to have died between 1977 and 1985, 85 being when the first barrel was found.
Right.
So the timeline here kind of fits along. And their cause of death was also due to blunt force trauma. So now we have 4 victims, 1 woman and 3 young girls. The woman was determined to be in her
And we
mid-20s.
still don't know who they are yet.
No idea who they are.
Okay.
So the woman was determined to be in her mid-20s, and the girls were estimated to be between 2 to 9.
Baby.
I know, like little babies.
Mm.
So all victims were found partially or completely skeletonized, meaning that they had been deceased for a significant amount of time. And even though they were skeletonized, it had been done so in a way that some of their DNA did remain on the body, so hair, tissue, things like that. So obviously the shocking discovery sparked a renewed interest in the case.
Absolutely. And
So
they would have DNA by this point, right? It's 2000?
we're still kind of in the beginning stages of DNA. We're definitely better than we were in 85, but
Right.
we're still not to where we are now.
Okay.
So it was determined that the woman and the girls had to be locals, and forensics helped with this, which is actually pretty cool. So samples of the remaining body tissue were taken, and it matched to
Mhm.
water samples from the Allenstown area, meaning that they had to
Okay.
have been in this area because they had water in their tissue. The
Okay.
bodies also contain the same chemicals found in the surrounding environment. Again, meaning that they were in the area. So
Right.
this led investigators to believe that all 4 victims had been living in the area for at least 3 months before they were murdered.
Okay.
Which is just so freaking cool that that's a thing that technology can do. It's mind-blowingly cool to me.
Nerd.
Oh, I know. So the older woman, she was determined to be Caucasian. Wow. Caucasian with possible Native. I know, I said that's so weird. With possible Native American ancestry. At the time of her death, she was believed to be between 23 and 33. They believe born maybe around 1954. She was between 5'2" and 5'7", had curly or wavy brown hair, and had extensive dental work, including multiple fillings with 3 extractions.
So that's you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're having that much done to your teeth.
And a lot of these similarities sound like me between 23 and 33, 5'2" to 5'7", curly hair, dental work.
Lauren.
But not more than 1954.
Maybe.
What are you going to say?
Maybe this is your past self.
God, I would hope not.
I mean, it would make sense. You get murdered in a past life. You now have a podcast talking about murder. It's only a matter of time before you came across your own case.
Do you believe in past lives?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I do too. We'll have to have this conversation.
Depends on the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Okay.
the,
We'll put a pin in
well,
that.
yes. Oh, absolutely. Because this will make this episode from like however long to like 4 hours. So,
We already ramble.
oh, I know. So we'll we'll come back to this.
Definitely takes a special kind of person to like us.
So for everyone who's still listening, thanks.
Thanks, man.
All right. So the oldest of the girls, she had been found in the same drum as the older woman. She
Okay.
was also believed to have some Native American heritage as well as lighter European American complexions. She was
So
between
probably related.
potentially. There are a lot.
Okay.
I'll get to why it could potentially be. She was between 4'3" and 4'6". She had wavy or light brown hair, and she was believed to be between 5 and 11 years old. They believe maybe born around 1971. She had
Okay.
crooked front teeth and diastema, which is a space between all of your top teeth. She had no fillings, and she had 2 earrings in each ear. And it was interesting because she was found to have signs of pneumonia.
Hmm.
Yeah, the middle girl, the one who was found in the second barrel.
Okay.
She was between the ages of 4 and 2. Nope, 2 and 4. She was she was about 3'8". She had a gap between her front teeth and also had a noticeable overbite. Later DNA suggested that she was primarily Caucasian with light Asian, African, and Native American heritage. She may also have been suffering from anemia, so among other things, it's mainly the lack of iron in your blood.
Okay.
And then the youngest girl was believed to be between 1 and 3 years old, born
Mhm.
maybe around 1977. She had long blonde or light brown hair, was between 2'1" and 2'6", and she also had a gap between her front teeth. So they all kind of have like similar dental features.
Sure. Yeah. I was just thinking that.
Yeah. So in June of 2013, with these descriptions of the victims, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were able to make facial reconstructions to show what all of these girls would have looked like when they were alive.
Okay.
These reconstructions incorporated the dental information that had been collected on the victims and showed how
Mhm.
their teeth could have affected the appearance of their faces. So that overbite, the gaps, kind of all of that.
Is there you know how like there's that concept of like when you have such a skeleton or like a decomposed body, you match the dental? Is that like a
Yeah.
thing yet? Okay.
I don't know if that's a thing yet. It is a
Okay.
thing, but I don't know if we
Right.
had it at this point.
Okay.
And so all of their appearances in these reconstructions were created in black and white because at the time, the skin tone and eye colors of the victims still weren't known.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Then in November of 2015, the center released a third set of reconstructions at a news conference at the New Hampshire State Attorney General's office. So these were kind of their more solidified, like, we've done all of our research. Like, this is what we believe these women and girls looked like.
Okay.
Everyone was hoping that by having these reconstructions, someone would see it and come forward saying that they knew the victims, but still, no luck.
Mhm.
So it is very interesting how the victims were identified because we do identify them.
Okay.
So in November of 2017, a professional researcher, a librarian from Connecticut named Rebecca Heath, whose hobby was looking into missing persons cases, heard about the
Uh-huh.
Bear Brook case and she was hooked.
Okay.
So because she had this hobby of looking into missing persons cases, she was usually online combing through message boards with posts about loved ones. As she was looking, Heath was specifically on the lookout for posts that may match any information that law enforcement had announced about the Bear Brook murders and the victims at a press conference that they had earlier that year. Quote, one post in particular was a half-brother looking for his half-sister, Sarah McWaters, and the locations were in California. The time frame was around the 70s. She was born in 77, Heath said. The younger brother had also never met Sarah, but in 1999 had created a post on Ancestry.com in an effort to try to find her. He posted that
Okay.
Sarah had been born in Hawaiian Gardens, California, and that her father was in the Marines. Heath goes on to say, then I continued that there were other family members of Sarah's mother, who was named Marlise, who was looking for another sister. And I was like, wait a second. So there's 2 sisters, not just one. That's when I
Mhm.
saw another post about Marie Vaughn, Sarah's half-sister. So
Okay.
Heath then looked for Marlise's death certificate, trying to see, like, who is this woman? Well, she came up
Mhm.
empty-handed, meaning that either Marlise was still alive or was dead but unidentified.
Okay.
She kept seeing a ton of different family members looking for this woman and her 2 children, all ages and locations fitting where she knew the Bear Brook murders had taken place and kind of where the
Yeah,
victims
yeah,
would
yeah.
come from. Heath then connected with one of these family members from a message board through Facebook and started to ask her questions about the girls. She said, quote, and then she throws in, oh, and by the way, she married a guy with the last name Rasmussen. I was like, oh my God, it's them. It's them. This is it. This is it. This is real. So that name Rasmussen meant nothing to the poster at the original time, but it meant a lot to
Okay.
Heath, which we will get into.
Okay.
So, genetic genealogist Barbara Ray Venter around this time had come across an article about a new forensic technique that could extract autosomal DNA from rootless hair. So it used to be that you would need the bulb of hair to be able to do the
Right.
DNA. This, you just need hair. You can figure
Oh,
out like how to do the DNA just on a strand of hair, which is huge at this time. So
absolutely.
something cool about this Barbara lady, she also helped bring the Golden State Killer to justice.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So Barbara Ray Venter reached out to New Hampshire authorities and asked them to send hair samples that they had collected from the victims to Dr. Ed Green, an associate professor of biomolecular engineering at the University of California, Santa Cruz.
He's probably stupid.
Probably. So he worked on DNA technology development and had the lab that created this new hair technique.
Oh,
So
wow.
she had sent the files to him, he sends them back, and she put that DNA into genealogy databases and was able to start building family trees for these victims. All of
Okay.
the work that these two women did, Ray Venter and Heath, familial connections were made. On October 12th, 2018, Heath submitted a tip to law enforcement about who she believed these victims may be. This launched the New Hampshire authorities to start reaching out to these newly found family members who provided DNA, photos, things like that, as well as others in the field to help, and pretty much opening up this case again and taking another look at it because now we might have the victims. In June
Okay.
of 2019, New Hampshire authorities announced they finally had identified 3 of the 4 Bear Brook victims.
Oh,
Yes, so on June 6, 2019, New Hampshire investigators held a press conference regarding the case. They also revealed that they had discovered the identities of 3 of these victims. Marlise Honeychurch and her 2 biological daughters of different biological fathers, Marie Elizabeth Vaughn and Sarah Lynn McWaters, were the 3 victims.
oh,
Marlise and Marie had been found in the same drum, the one back in 1985.
okay.
Sarah and the quote middle child were found in the second drum, the one found in 2000.
And that middle child's not related to them.
Right. Well, we don't know. But so what
Okay.
is sad is we had identified the 3, Marlise,
Uh-huh.
Marie, and Sarah, but then there's this one other one who we just don't know who she is. She has yet to be
Oh.
identified even to this day.
Oh.
So it's believed that all 4 victims died between 1978 and 1981. And finally, with the names and IDs of the victims being known, Honeychurch and Vaughn were able to have a real funeral. It was held in Allenstown in November of 2019, and they were given a new headstone, one which finally had their names on it. Their
Mhm.
entire family was attendance for this funeral. Sarah was laid to rest in Connecticut to be closer to her father's family. So, a little bit more on Marlise Honeycomb, Honeychurch. So,
I was wondering when you were going to say that.
each time. So, I found a really cool timeline, but it said that she was born on January 28th, 1954 in Connecticut. She came from a big family and was the second oldest of 5 children. Her parents divorced in 1961 when she was only 7 years old. Her father took the 3 youngest to live in California, and she remained in Connecticut with her older sister and her father. In 1969, Marlise moved to California at the age of 15. It was around this time that she started using her mother's last name of Solomon and was believed to be living with her in La Mirada, California. On June 12, 1971, Marlise married her first husband in Las Vegas, and on December 6th gave birth to their very first child, Marie Elizabeth Vaughn. So that's the one who was found in the barrel with her in
Got it.
85.
Okay.
In June of 1972, the family moved back to Connecticut to live with her father. After moving around a bit and living in a few different states, in 1974, Marlise and her husband got a divorce, and she was awarded custody of her daughter, Marie. In September of that year, she married her second husband in California. They moved around a bit again, and on December 13th of 1977, her second daughter, Sarah Lynn McWaters, was born. So
Got
she
it.
was remembered by her sisters as being bubbly and quirky with a good sense of humor, and they recalled that she was excited to be a mom and that she loved her kids dearly.
Okay.
Just the next year, in 1978, Marlise separated from her husband, Sarah's father. In November of that same year, Marlise started dating a man named Terry Rasmussen. If that name
Hmm.
sounds familiar, it should. So the holidays were all around, and Marlise and Terry, and I believe her daughters, head to Marlise's mom's house in La Puente, California for Thanksgiving. And this was a big deal because this is the first time that the family's meeting this mystery man that Marlise is dating.
Okay.
But when they met him, he was not what they expected. They started questioning Marlise as to why she was dating someone who was so much older than she was.
Oh.
Over the next couple of days, things got a little heated, and Marlise got into an argument with her mother. She and Rasmussen left the residence, I assume with her children. She left and never contacted her family again, and this was the last time that her family ever saw Marlise, her daughters, or Rasmussen.
Oh, no.
The years go on a little, and at some point, presumably around May 1980, it is assumed that Marlise changed her name and started going by the alias of Elizabeth Evans, which I will explain in a second why she would have chosen that name of all the millions of names you could choose. This
Right.
name was being used on legal documents, and in January of 1980, a certified letter came out of Manchester, New Hampshire, signed by an Elizabeth Evans.
Mm.
Rasmussen, Terry Rasmussen, was also associated with the same address, which is what leads us to believe that Marlies had changed her name to this because we know that Rasmussen is at that location.
Okay.
So he was arrested in May of 1980 for theft of services, and he was arrested under the name Robert T. Evans, which
Hmm.
could make sense as to why Marlies had changed her last name to Evans.
Right. To be Evans.
Uh-huh. So during his arrest in May of 1980, the arrest report listed his wife as Elizabeth Evans.
Mm-hmm.
But after another arrest in October of 1980, so just a couple months later, again, he was diverting electric current. His spouse is no longer listed on this report. So
Hmm.
if you have a spouse, it'll list it. This report, no spouse is listed.
And how much later was this?
May was the first arrest, and this is October.
Damn.
So like 5 months.
Yeah.
So that was all in 1980. Nothing happens until 1985, which brings us back to the beginning of our story when the barrels were found. A private
Okay.
investigator was eventually hired by Marlise's family to try to find her and her children, but the efforts were unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's reverse back to this guy who Marlise had dated, Terry Rasmussen. He was born on December 23rd, 1943 in Denver, Colorado. So an awful Christmas gift to his parents and to the world. He grew up in Arizona and attended Whittier Elementary School, then eventually North High School in Phoenix, which that's really not a unique name. Where do you go? North High School. Like, it just sounds so stupid. Okay. Then in 1960, he dropped out right after his sophomore year. In April of 1961, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy and moved to Hawaii. He served for 6 years until he was discharged in 1967. On July 20th, 1968, he married his first wife, Felta or Fleta in Hawaii. This one article I found listed both of the names in the same article. So we're going to go with Fleta. So
Someone didn't proofread.
No, they did not. So in 1969, he and his wife moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and have 2 twin daughters. It was also at this time that he was working as an electrician for an unknown company, which is kind of interesting because his past charges were always for converting or like rerouting electric current. So maybe he was always meant to be an electrician. So in 1970, the family moved to Redwood City, California, where he continued on with his work as an electrician. This was also the year that his son was born. And it seemed like he had the perfect life. You know, he had a wife, 3 children, is a veteran, you know, just kind of living life, but he was not a great guy. His family recalls that he was physically abusive as well as possibly sexually abusive.
Oh.
He would burn one of his sons with cigarette butts.
Mm.
His wife said that he worked all the time and rarely spent time at home or with his family. And when he was home, he would fly into rages and throw things. One time, he even threatened to use a revolver on Fleta.
Well, damn.
Not a great guy. So in
No.
1972, his daughter was born, so 4th child, and he and his wife
Okay.
separated temporarily. It was around this time in about 1973 that he was arrested for aggravated assault in April by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Then again in 1975, he was again arrested for aggravated assault, which finally prompted his wife to leave him, taking the kids with her and just peacing.
Good.
She said that she moved her and her kids around often because she was always afraid that Rasmussen would find them somehow.
Oh,
That's terrifying.
absolutely.
So then in 1975 or 76, the family is now living in Payson, Arizona, without Rasmussen, kind of on their own, doing their own thing. But in December, around Christmas time, he unexpectedly visits the family.
Damn.
So somehow he knew where they were.
Yeah.
So with him, he has an unidentified woman. He told his family he was
Okay.
living in Texas, and this is the last time that his family ever saw him. In 1978, Rasmussen is reportedly working in Texas on an oil rig, and this is also the year, on September 28th, that he and his wife are able to finalize their divorce.
Okay.
So after that, he drifted around, living in many different states, to include Arizona, California, Idaho, Virginia. Yuck, can't be in our state. Texas, Ohio, Oregon, and Hawaii, finally settling down in New Hampshire in the 70s. And as he was traveling to all these different places, it was often known that he would travel with different women and different children with him.
That's weird.
It's very weird. So while traveling around, he worked as an electrician for many different gas and oil companies. Then in November of 1978, he started dating a woman named Marlise Honeychurch, and we now sort of know what happened with her. Then
Okay.
So there we kind of have the little connection between the two of them.
Yeah.
Then between 1978 and 1979, he worked at the Waumbec Mill in New Hampshire, where he was going by the alias of Bob Evans or Robert T. Evans, which we know he started doing after Marlise left her family's house.
Right.
And can we go back to Bob Evans? That is a breakfast restaurant.
No, yes, it is.
I'm like, of all the million, again, names you could have chosen, Bob Evans.
Bob
Really?
Evans. Cool.
So in 1980, he was arrested 3 times, one for writing a bad check, one for theft, and one for, again, diverting electric current, all while going by the name of what?
Be arrested for a bad name.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have been. But so by all of this, he was still going by Robert T. Evans. Well, here it is believed that he married a woman named Elizabeth Evans, which we went over. But then at some point in 1981, so just a couple years later, he started dating another woman named Denise Buden of Manchester. So in November of 1981, Rasmussen, going by Robert Evans still, Denise and her 6-month-old daughter go missing shortly after Thanksgiving. Later, though, Evans appeared without Denise and abducted this daughter of hers and flew to California with her. Throughout the early 80s,
Wait. So Denise goes missing.
Denise, her daughter, and Evans go missing. Years later, Evans appears with the daughter.
With the daughter in California.
Yep, but no Denise.
No Denise. Got it.
Yep. So through the early 80s, he remained in possession of this daughter, who he named Lisa, and he would pose as her father.
Okay.
We don't know if he is, and I'll just say right now, there are going to be a lot of names we're going to have to keep track of. So if you have questions, please just ask them.
Okay.
All right. Because if you have questions, chances are someone else probably has a question. So
you took that from a teacher.
Probably. I wonder where I would have gotten that from.
Yeah.
All right. So then in 1985, which we know is like our big date, he was arrested in Cypress, California under the name of Curtis May Kimball for charges of driving under the influence and endangering the welfare of a child. So we have Terry Rasmussen, Bob Evans, Curtis May Kimball.
Okay.
So these are our 3 names so far.
All same guy.
Yes, all the same guy.
Got it.
So he was arrested for charges of driving under the influence and endangering the welfare of a child. He was given a court date, but he never appeared, so a warrant was issued for him. After this legal trouble, he changed his name again to Gordon Jensen. So this is our 4th name. I know, we need like a little whiteboard of all these names of his.
Right? Need a chart.
To the side, do I have anything? All right. In November of 1985, that's when the first barrel was found, as we've gone over. So then in 1986, he took Lisa to an RV park in Scotts Valley, California. There was a family there, Robert and Catherine Decker, who Jensen, at this point, somehow found. They thought that their daughter, who lived in Southern California, would be interested in adopting Lisa. So Jensen...
Okay, so wait. So he meets these people or he's friends with these people?
What I read was he just kind of meets them at this trailer home. Like maybe he's living in this trailer home. I don't know. But he goes to this like RV park trailer home kind of thing and finds these people who want to adopt Lisa.
Okay.
So they're all making plans to do this, but he disappears right before the family was able to have him sign the official adoption papers. So
Does he disappear with Lisa?
No, he leaves Lisa there and he just leaves on his own.
Just goes. Huh.
And because he did this, because he never signed those legal papers that are needed for adoption, Lisa was put into the foster care system.
Oh, no.
I know. And for that, another warrant was issued for Jensen's arrest, this time for child abandonment.
Did they not have adopted her when
See, that's what I was wondering. I was like, couldn't you have gone through the foster care system and adopted her or do something where it's like, we've been taking care of her for months, you know? Like, I don't know. But it was around this time that the authorities learned that he had been arrested previously under the name of Curtis Kimball after they successfully pulled a fingerprint of his from the RV park. So they're starting to put together that Gordon Jensen and Curtis Kimball are the same person.
Okay. Do they know who he really is?
Well, these 2 matches also hit off of a Terry Rasmussen.
So yes.
Yep. So at this point, they know all 3 of these aliases. They're starting to piece together that he is very big into using different names. But good old Rasmussen was nowhere to be found. In 1988, he was arrested under the name of Gary Mockerman. So,
oh my God.
What are we at? 6 names?
I don't know.
And this time, he was arrested for driving a stolen vehicle. Then in 1989, he was arrested again and received a 3-year prison sentence for child abandonment and child abuse under the name of Gordon Jensen. So they're able to kind of start making all of these more connections of all the people's names.
And what year is this?
This is 1989.
89. Okay.
So, this child abuse report came from a report that the Deckers made. So they said that they, as you know, they had Lisa. They noticed that she had marks on her that would indicate that she had been abused. So they had reported
Oh,
this.
no.
Yep. But under a plea deal, the added child abuse charge was dropped.
Ugh.
And instead of serving the 3 years that he had been sentenced, he only ended up serving 1.5 years.
Bruh.
He was paroled in 1990, and with that, he quickly left the area, obviously.
Bruh.
So after his release and years later, Rasmussen was back out and about under the alias of Larry Vanner.
Oh my God.
So what are we at, like 7 names?
Larry, Jerry, Harry, and Terry.
And Sue. So this is when he met a 44-year-old chemist from California named Yusan June. The two began dating, and in December of 1999, Yusan June introduced Rasmussen, or Vanner at this point, to her family. Her friends and family had expressed concern over the fact that this Vanner guy that June brought home, they said he was just odd. They
Okay.
said he felt odd and that there was just something off about him, and they didn't know
Yeah.
why June was with him. So the two were wed in an unofficial ceremony in 2001 in Richmond, which at first I thought was Virginia, but then I found out it was California. But it was so unofficial, like this little ceremony they had, that they had no real marriage license. So they never really had any marriage
Interesting.
license that was ever signed. June told her friend Renee Rose about how she was having some doubts about Vanner, though. She was worried that he was freeloading, because he was. Even though
Oh,
they're
yeah,
married, she was like kind of doing everything for the relationship. And she was actually planning on asking him to leave. So, like, kind of getting him
okay.
out of the house. Well, suddenly in 2002, she disappeared.
Oh,
Just 2 years after she had introduced him to her family. She was reported missing by her friends after Vanner would fend off any questions about June's whereabouts with a myriad of excuses. So the friends would ask, like, where is she? And he would say, oh, she's spending time with her mother and taking care of her mother. Oh, she's going to get therapeutic help somewhere else. Well, June's friend Renee Rose was not a fan of Vanner. Yeah, she told 2020 in an interview that, quote, he didn't even look healthy. His face was gray. He smoked constantly. Larry would just grab and gobble up everything on the table and belch and eat more, and then he'd go sit on the couch.
ew.
I know, so he just sounds like a disgusting human.
It's gross.
She said that Vanner tried to tell her that June had told him that she didn't like Rose anymore and didn't want her in her life. So Vanner's trying to say, like, you know, Rose, like, she doesn't like you. She doesn't want you in your life, like, in her life anymore. So bye.
If
But,
Joe ever said that shit to me, like if I couldn't get in touch with you
oh, yeah.
and Joe ever said that to me, I would be in there so fucking fast.
Oh, yeah.
Cause I'm like, where did you bury her? Where is she?
She would never say something like that to me. Rose, being kind of a badass, told Vanner that she wanted June to tell her that. She said, quote, I want you,
Yeah,
son,
that's what
not
I would
you.
say too. That's a good one. Yes.
Right.
Bring her, tell her, say it to my face.
Have her say it to me. So yeah, Rose was like, I want Yoon-san to tell me that she's done with our relationship or I'm going to get the sheriff involved. Snaps. Yep. So when he wasn't able to provide on that, Rose went to the Contra Costa County Sheriff. Wow, that's a tongue
What?
twister. Contra
Wait.
Costa County.
Contra Costa County.
Wow.
Okay.
Roxanne Guenheed was the homicide detective on the squad.
Sam.
You don't have to put on the red light. All right, in September, Vanner, or Rasmussen, was brought in for questioning because obviously, you know, he's like the boyfriend or husband or whatever. And at this point, he's still going by the name of Larry Vanner. Quote, he was polite and very soft-spoken and very smart. And with his twinkly blue eyes, he could get somebody to maybe trust him. Guyan Guenheard. I'm going to call her Roxanne. I can't pronounce her last name. So she told 2020 that. She also said, all we were really trying to do was to determine where Houston was and if she was okay, but he wasn't being cooperative with that at all. Vanner kept changing his story. With all of the changes, the police were becoming more and more convinced that he was somehow involved. So they asked for his fingerprints and he voluntarily gave them, which apparently he didn't have to do at this point. But when they were run, I know, but when they were run, they came back as Curtis Kimball. So now we're connected to Curtis, Gordon, Rasmussen, Terry. You know, we're connecting all of these names now.
I'm confused a little bit because Terry's his real name, right?
Yes.
So why wouldn't that one come up first? If they've connected the aliases already,
Because he didn't use that one as much. He
okay.
never used that one when he was in trouble.
Okay.
Yes.
Got
So
it.
it took a while for us to be able to know that it was him because he used his like Curtis Kimball, Gordon Jensen, Bob
He
Evans.
used
He
yeah,
used those ones when he mainly got in trouble. So those were the names that would pop up first because those were the fingerprints that were in the system.
understood. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So after this, police searched his home and found June's body. Her bloody and dismembered body was found buried under pounds of cat litter in their home. Next to the huge pile of cat litter, the detectives found an axe leaning against the wall. It was revealed that she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Does that sound familiar?
Hmm.
So the body was found in the basement, which was located below the bedrooms, which means that Larry slept essentially over the body for months until it was found.
Ew.
In November, he was arrested and formally charged with the murder of Yus and June.
What year is this?
This was like 2002, 2003 ish.
That he was arrested for her murder.
He was arrested in 2002.
Okay.
Yep, in November.
Okay.
But then in 2003 is when they had the trial. So he,
Okay.
as Curtis Kimball, pled no contest to the charges of murder and dismemberment. So no contest means that the criminal is accepting their conviction, but is not
Mhm.
technically pleading one way or the other. They're not like admitting guilt. But he was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. And this plea, so him pleading no contest, came as no surprise for the court, though. It is believed that he would actually have pled not guilty. So trying to say that he didn't do this, would go to trial, all that stuff. But Contra Costa County, homicide detective Roxanne, believes that he overheard her saying that if he pled not guilty, then she would request a paternity test for Lisa. And still at this point, we don't know if Lisa's his biological daughter or not.
Wait, Lisa's not with him, is she?
No, she is now in foster care.
So why did this detective ask for
Because she found out that because he had the Curtis Kimball and all of those other names, that
Uh-huh.
whoever he was going at that time, I think Gordon Jensen or whatever, had charges of child abandonment.
Oh, 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 oh,
So
oh,
she's
oh,
able to
oh.
connect all these things. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to see if he can tell me anything about Lisa.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, they had run his fingerprints. They leaked him to everything. So this prompted an investigation in 2003 by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department to open a case to find Lisa's biological family. Maybe hoping from that we can, one, find out who Lisa is, two, why she was with this man who may or may not be her father.
Right,
I think we all know here that Lisa was the biological daughter of Denise.
right,
Yes,
right, right,
who
right.
had disappeared like in the 80s.
Yeah,
But the DNA did find that the two were not related, and Rasmussen was not Lisa's biological father.
pretends to be shocked.
Yep. So when Lisa was found and interviewed by detectives back in 1986, before she went into foster care, she was asked if she had
86?
any. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Okay.
yeah. So back in 86, she was asked if she had any siblings.
Hmm.
She said she did, but, quote, they died eating grass mushrooms when they were out camping.
What?
So that didn't really make sense to anyone at the time. But years later, after we found out like who this Rasmussen guy started to turn out to be, it was believed that maybe he had killed her siblings as well.
Oh,
So it's believed that Lisa was with Denise, like her daughter, but then that there were
yeah.
also a couple other siblings.
Oh, do you think it was, the other 2 girls?
I don't know. I don't think it was one of them because the other one we know is with Marlise. But there's no way to know if
Oh,
it was
that's
that
right.
middle child who we don't have identified yet. That's
Oh,
actually a
that's
really
right.
good point. I have no idea. So on December 28th, 2010, Rasmussen died at the
See,
age of 6.
sometimes it benefits to hear the story again. Because
You're like,
like,
wait, I have another question.
no, like, legit though, some of the shit you're saying, I'm like, "Did she really say this yesterday?" Like,
I think both
uh,
of us are just so defeated last time that it wasn't working that we're just like, damn. All
ay, ay, ay. Okay.
right. So on December 28th, 2010, Rasmussen died at the age of 67 while imprisoned at High Desert State Prison. His cause of death was a combination of lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and pneumonia.
Good.
And I hate to say it, but also at the same time, I don't hate to say it. I hope he suffered in
Sounds
those last months of
painful.
his life. I hope it was painful.
Absolutely.
I hope he did not have a good life. So he was eventually cremated and his ashes were thrown into the sea, which I feel like is way too nice of something for him. They should have been flushed down the freaking toilet.
You're right.
So in 2013, the whole case of Lisa opened up again. And this case came across the desk of San Bernardino detective Peter Heatley. Genealogy databases were getting better and were growing, and in 2015, genetic genealogist, our Barbara Ray Venter, aided in the case, but nothing came from this new reinvestigation, so we don't really know who Lisa is. In December of 2016, police finally reveal that Denise is considered missing 35 years after she disappeared.
Woof.
So she disappeared, and then 35 years later, they're like, "Oh, yeah, she's missing." So
Wow. No one
and
reported her before that?
so she went missing in 1981, and her family did not report her when she originally went missing because they believe she left town due to financial reasons and kind of left on her own accord. So they didn't think
Mm.
anything, like, weird of it. She was only determined officially missing after her daughter, who had originally disappeared in 1981, was found well and alive in 2016 in California.
Lisa.
That's who we believe, yes.
Oh.
So she sort of came out of the woodwork when publicity surrounding the Bear Brook murder started to come up again. And so she's keeping her real name private, but we're going to go with the name Lisa here because though that's not her
Mhm.
real name, that's the one that Rasmussen had given her. So yeah,
Sure.
she's kind of the one who came out at this time.
Oh
And she
my.
started to work with Ray Venter to try to help find more about her identity.
Mhm.
So it is believed that, well, not it's believed, they discovered that her birth name given to her by Denise had been Dawn, and that the man she
Oh.
believed was her father. So this whole time she believed Rasmussen was her father. She found out he was actually her kidnapper
Wow.
and that he had taken her when she was so young and kind of everything that happened before she went into foster care. Yes. So after it came out that Denise was actually considered missing in 2017, authorities announced that not only was she missing, but she was connected to the Bear Brook murders. They believe she was connected after she was last seen with her boyfriend, Robert Bob Evans.
Oh,
In January 2017, authorities announced that Evans was a suspect in the disappearance of Denise and in the Bear Brook murders.
but
We
he's
know that
dead.
at this point, unfortunately, yeah.
So he died before we even knew who they were.
Yep, I know. So, quote, we knew that Bob Evans actually spent a good amount of time on that property where the barrels were found because he used to fix up and do some electrical work at a camp store that was right there on the property, end quote. In Bear Brook State Park, said Carol Schwitzer, a supervisor of the Forensic Services Unit at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Wait. Wasn't there a burnt down store
Uh huh.
on the property?
Uh huh.
And we just found out that he worked at said store.
Uh huh. That had a very convenient little path that led right over to where the barrels had been found. Uh huh.
Okay.
Yes. Good catch, Mackenzie.
Thank you. I don't even have any strength.
I know. Look at you. So if you can follow it, I'm sure others can. So, police released video footage of Evans from an interview that they had with him, hoping that by releasing this video, his true, 100% true identity would come to light. Not all of these aliases, but who this man was. Well, just 2 months later, his family came forward and revealed that his true name, real person name, was Terrence Terry Rasmussen.
Wait a minute. So they didn't even know that he was Rasmussen until like recently?
They knew that all of these different names were connected, but they didn't know who he truly was. You know, they knew all of these aliases, but they weren't sure which of those aliases was his real name.
Damn, and he didn't tell him, obviously, because he
Yeah,
died.
well, of course not.
That's
So this
insane.
I know. So this idea was confirmed by DNA from a son of Rasmussen's, believed to be from his first marriage, so those 4 children all the way back.
Yeah.
And this is the same way that DNA was used to find the Golden State Killer, the familial DNA.
Bruh.
It's
Look at
just
that.
so cool.
Full circle.
So it was also around this time that Denise was determined to not be connected to the Bear Brook murders and was not the older woman, which we can thank Ray Venter and Heath for. So before
Right,
they
that
did all of their
was
research, it was believed that maybe Denise was that woman. But after they did their
Oh,
research, they found out that Denise was not the woman, was not connected, but still Evans was connected because Marlise had the connection to him.
and she's still missing.
Yes, well, technically. Well, she was the one in the barrel.
Well, right. Sorry, I was thinking Denise.
Yes, Denise is still missing.
Yes. Okay.
So what's actually really wild about this case is we found out Rasmussen was the murderer in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But this was before we found out who the victims were. So typically in murder cases, you find out the victims and then you
Yeah.
search for the murder and find the murderer. In this case, we found the victims, found the murderer, and then identified the victims.
Yeah, that's a little backwards.
It really is. So let's go back to our original victims real quick. So now we knew who Rasmussen is and that he's determined to be the one who killed those 4 who were found.
Okay.
We know that 3 out of the 4 of them were identified, all 3 of those 4 being related. And then we have our middle child, the one who is not related to the other 3 and the one who is yet to be identified.
What have they tested her DNA against Lisa?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
Mm.
But they did do some DNA analysis, and it was determined
Mhm.
that this middle child, the fourth one found in the barrels, was the biological daughter of Terry Rasmussen himself.
Okay, my theory, you gotta test that DNA against Lisa's because I bet you that that child is like her half sister.
It could be because we don't know who this fourth child's mom is. We have no idea her
Right.
family, except that she is related to the man who murdered her.
What they should still do is get Lisa to because what if she's a half sister?
Right. Exactly. Because we're never going to know who her dad is, and we're never going to know who this like fourth child's mom is.
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
least, yeah, we could see if there is some connection there between the two of them. Because
Exactly.
what if her mom is Denise? You know, I don't
Exactly.
know. Exactly. All right. So in 2021, investigators were able to reveal that this fourth child's mother may have had relatives in Pearl River County, Mississippi, and that following year, so 2022, they determined that she is most likely a descendant of Thomas Dead Horse Mitchell, a man born in 1836, or William Livings, born in 1826. So these two men, if either one of them are the great grandfather, would be the fifth or sixth great grandfather of the child.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So,
good.
I mean, it could
Just
help
need to
us.
find 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Right. So, something weird that I found. All right. There's this website that I use called allthat'sinteresting.com. They usually have a lot of great information. And so I was looking at them, and this one person commented about a month ago. So, sometime around May of 2023. The commenter's name was Deanne Ram. Okay. Very confusing. This is what the comment says. Quote,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure the girl with the missing tooth is a photoshopped picture of my daughter who's alive.
Photoshopped.
There's too many coincidences with this story in my life. The little girl with dark hair resembles my other daughter who hasn't taken a DNA test. A family member told me they saw my dad at a trailer park with a little girl years ago. That was before I'd heard of this story. Possibly the mom's name is Lisa and the daughter's name is Denise. Like the song, my name's not Lisa. I've tried to contact someone. No one listens to me though. End quote.
Okay, so does this lady think her daughter is the unidentified girl?
I'm not sure what this lady's trying to think or what she's trying to say. So she's pretty much saying, like, okay, the two girls who are in these like reconstructed photos are my daughters,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they're not my daughters because my daughters are alive. They're not in the barrels. And also, she says that a
How can
family
2
member,
photos
I don't know.
1 okay.
And then she also said that someone told her that they saw her dad in a trailer park with a young girl, which is making me think that is she thinking her dad's Rasmussen?
Right, that was my next question.
Right. So I'm not really sure of what's going on with this lady, but that's all she commented. No one commented following her stuff, and that was that with her.
See, this is why no one listens to you. It don't make no sense.
Right. It makes literally no sense. But so if
0.
anyone is aware of a missing child or a missing child and her mother from the late 70s to the early 80s, you can call the New Hampshire State Police at 603-271-2663, or you can email coldcaseunit@dos.nh.gov. You can also contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. These are also things that we will post in our show notes. But we are not done yet.
What?
So, have there been other victims of Terry Rasmussen?
Probably.
Apparently, there had been another woman connected to Rasmussen who went missing in June of 1980. Her name was Denise Dienholt.
So this would have been
Right before the barrels were found and kind of a little after he would have started dating Marlise. So this
so
Denise,
after what a wait. So there's 2 Denises, yes?
yes, this is Denise number 2, Denise Danholt.
So she was in June of
80.
an 80, and when was
First Denise went missing in 1981.
and when did the other girl go missing? Like the one in the barrel.
1980 something, because she was before first Denise.
Right, because we said that in October he was so is this second Denise between those 2?
I think so.
Okay.
So the second Denise, Denise number 2, she was 25 years old and went missing from a bar in Manchester. But then it made me wonder if second Denise is the same as first Denise, because this Wikipedia article
Oh,
said that first Denise was from Gloucester and
I
this
don't
is from
know.
Manchester. I'm not sure. But so this Denise,
I mean,
Denise
New
number
Hampshire's
2,
not that big. Maybe they're
no,
really
it's
close
not.
to each other.
Right, they could be. So second Denise lived only 2 blocks away from Lauren Ron. So Lauren Ron lived a mile and a half away from Rasmussen. She was 14 years old and she disappeared from Manchester in April of 1980.
14.
Yes. So she lived 2 blocks away from Denise number 2, lived a mile and a half away from Rasmussen, and also disappeared in the 80s. So then, in November of 2017, FBI agents and police conducted a search of Manchester after an anonymous tip came in regarding Dan Holt after Rasmussen was linked to the Bear Brook murders.
Wait. Where was first Denise from?
First Denise was from Manchester. Second Denise was also from Manchester.
I
But so
thought you said
she had 2 places where she could have been from. First Denise was either from Gloucester or Manchester. Second Denise was definitely from Manchester. So an anonymous tip came in to FBI agents and police about this second Denise
okay.
after Rasmussen was linked to the murder. So he was linked in 2017 and someone came forward with this tip.
Okay.
So they conducted a second search of the Manchester area in 2018. By 2020, New Hampshire's Senior Assistant Attorney General Jeff Streisen said that there is no evidentiary connection between Dan Holt and Rasmussen. So trying to say that the two of them, there's no evidence that they were linked together. But
Okay.
this case and the interest surrounding it did bring renewed attention to Dan Holt's disappearance all these years later. So at least that's something good that came from it.
Yeah.
John Hubbard, San Joaquin County, California Assistant Sheriff, speculated that Rasmussen may also be responsible for the death of Amanda Schumann Diza. So in 1995, her body was found by scavengers inside of a fridge that had been dumped into a canal. Inside of the fridge, there had been a pillow, sleeping bag, and several blankets. She had also died of blunt force trauma to the head, like many of the other victims of Rasmussen.
Point of interest.
Yes.
So, Raspy was working at the store
Uh-huh.
on the guy's land
Yeah.
who was supposed to get rid of a refrigerator.
Oh. Interesting. Because I knew there was another fridge in my story, but never did I connect the two of those.
See, I'm telling you, we should fuck up more
Ew.
often so I have to hear your stories.
Right, second time. And so what's also interesting is that inside of this fridge, there was milk that was still in there. And it's a very unique brand of milk, one that matches up to where Rasmussen had been at the time. So the milk, same area that Rasmussen was. But authorities believe that he may have been involved with 6 or more murders and disappearances.
Goddamn.
Terrence Rasmussen became known as the Chameleon Killer and is believed to have used, quote, at least 5 different aliases in a decades-long run of crimes across the country, including at least 5 homicides and likely more. Criminologist Jack Levin said that Rasmussen is unlike any serial killer he has ever studied. He said, quote, what distinguishes Rasmussen from most serial killers is that he targeted people with whom he had a relationship. Most serial killers would never do that. It's the last thing they would do. Instead, they focus on complete strangers. So that's what's really scary about him is that he targets those who he has like a deep personal relationship with.
Yeah.
Unlike BTK, who his wife had no idea he was a serial killer because he did stuff to other people he didn't know. Same with John Wayne Gacy. Like they would never target their family members. And their family members 9 times out of 10 had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this guy, what's scary is you think you have this close relationship with him and you're not safe
bad
even
dude.
then. So this is
Bad
the
news
case
bears.
of bad news bears of the Bear Brook murders and Terry Rasmussen, one of the most confusing cases I have had the pleasure of putting together.
We
So I hope
definitely
it
need
made
some
sense.
string.
Yeah, it was definitely.
Look, I already have tax.
Oh my God, we're halfway there. So yeah, this was just a convoluted, confusing, intertwined, twisted story that I hope makes sense to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's a good thing that I was always the kid to ask questions.
No, I think that probably really helped in this situation because there's just, it's just the 100 different names he had and the different connections of himself and the victims. And just, dude, I don't even know.
You know, it's funny because His name reminds me of Rasputin.
Yes, me too. Every time I would say his name, that's what I would think of. And I was like, I don't like this.
I just like pictured the guy from Anastasia the entire story.
You'll have to post a picture of what he looks like because he does not look like that at all. But he just looks.
If you keep telling me to post a picture for an episode and then don't remind me when
I know. I think about it and then I listen back to the episode and I was like, I need to tell Mackenzie. But then I get so into like editing mode that I forget. And then, that's what happens.
Put a reminder in your phone.
I could. Or you could.
Or you could because you're the one who always says it.
Yeah, but you're the poster.
Yeah, but it's your direction.
Yeah, this is both of our responsibilities. Well, now that we had that nightmare of a case, Mackenzie, what are you telling me about today?
Okay. So this story does contain topics of suicide and suicide attempts, but it is not the main focus of this story. However, I did want to make it known at the beginning so people are not caught off guard later on.
Yes.
So this is my favorite kind of story because it's a 2-for-1 special. I was looking for haunted tales and came out with so much more. The Lake of the Clouds hiker's hut sits atop the largest mountain in the White Mountain Range, Mount Washington. Known as one of the most dangerous mountains in the country. It has over 160 deaths and countless disappearances.
No.
Right. Legends say that the spirits of the departed and missing haunt the mountains and its travelers. Those who are familiar with the area or have hiked the trails themselves call it the presence.
I hate that.
With a capital P.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. My hope is by the end of this that you, Lauren, will feel as nervous as I do when you are telling ghost stories. But it sucks because now Joe's back.
And it's daytime. Last time we were recording, it was nighttime.
And your back's not facing your living room.
Right. I was smart and I have it up against a wall. I know.
We'll try anyway.
That's all I can ask.
If you, the listener, also get spooked, add a bonus. So before we begin, it's important to have some biological background of the mountain range. The White Mountains are part of the Appalachian Mountain Range and cover about a quarter of New Hampshire and a small part of Maine. The White Mountains have numerous ranges that are known for having alpine huts that are maintained by the Appalachian Mountain Club.
Okay.
The range we are focusing on today is known as the Presidential Range. This range has the highest peaks in the White Mountains, and all the summits are named after presidents.
Oh,
but you didn't see that coming. Huh?
I did not.
But it was called the Presidential Range.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I understood.
Okay. This range is also known for having the worst weather in the country because of the high winds and the unpredictability of the storms. In fact, the weather is so severe that some use the mountain range to train to climb the world's highest mountains, K2 and Everest.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No. There are some things that people want to do. Like one day I wanted to skydive. Not anymore, but one day I did. Climbing a mountain in the freezing cold weather where you could die is really not on my bucket list at all.
Yeah, I agree. Narrowing our focus even more. The hut in our story, the Lake of the Clouds, is on the highest peak in the entire range, Mount Washington. All of the summits in the Presidential Range are over 4,000 feet tall, with the Mount Washington summit reaching 6,288 feet, which is 1,917 meters, and has reported the highest wind speeds outside of a cyclone at 231 miles per hour, or 372.
No.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do that.
372.
Oh, one more thing.
Kilometers per hour.
Oh.
And the highest recorded temperature was 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius. And the lowest was negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit and negative 43 degrees Celsius.
Gross.
which after 0, they're all just kind of the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fucking cold. The Appalachian Mountain Range maintains a set of huts and lodges all throughout the White Mountains. They have campgrounds, hermit shelters, ski lodges, and huts. Their huts range in size and location and are meant as a place of shelter for those hiking the trails along the different mountain ranges. The Lake of the Clouds is near the summit of Mount Washington and provides hikers with meals, water, shuttles, and a place to sleep.
Wow.
The AMC website advertises beautiful views from one of their most popular huts. My friend, who's from New Hampshire and an avid hiker, stayed at this hut before. She told me about there's some sort of emergency shelter kind of attached to it in case it's not like open.
Right.
Especially if there's unexpected bad weather. And so I asked her if she ever felt the presence or if anything strange happened. She said no. But the wind was so loud that she wouldn't have been able to hear anything anyway.
Well.
But fear not. She is not my only source of information. She did say that she wasn't surprised it was haunted given the amount of deaths that have happened on the mountain.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm. Ethan Allen Crawford and his wife Lucy were the first settlers to settle on the mountain in the early 1800s. I say first because the Native Americans that inhabited the area did not climb to the summit of the mountains because they believed it belonged to the Great Spirit. But more on that later.
Okay.
The Crawfords called the area the Crawford's Notch and opened an inn and guided travelers to the summit. Ethan Crawford was guiding so many travelers to the summit of Mount Washington that he decided to create a footpath to the summit. I said summit a lot.
You really wanted us to know it was the summit.
The summit. You're going to the tippy top. Tippy top. This footpath eventually became the oldest maintained footpath in the United States. And in 1818 and 1819, a crew of workers began working to create the trails. And instead of going back to Crawford's each night, they would camp out in the woods. The men would often complain of what they called the presence. Each night, the men couldn't shake that feeling that they were being watched. You know that feeling you get when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up like someone is watching you, but when you turn, there's no one there.
Oh, yes, I do actually know that feeling.
The men said that this feeling embraced evil, a sense of impending doom.
Ew.
Da, da, da. These men were so shaken up by this feeling that within the first couple of months, 2 men quit and vowed to never return to the mountain again.
Oh, dang.
Nonetheless, the path was completed in 1840. The Mount Washington Auto Road was completed in 1861 as an open road carriage and was considered the first man-made tourist attraction in the nation. The Cog Railway was the first rack and pinion railroad in the world. And for those of you who are not train enthusiasts, a rack and pinion railroad is a, quote, a rack railway. I don't like so many R's next to each other. Is a steep grade railway with toothed rack rail.
What?
There's so many like R's right next to each other. A rack railway is a steep grade railway with a toothed rack rail, usually between the running rails. Ha!
Nicely done.
The trains are fitted with 1 or more cog wheels or pinions that mesh with the rack rail. This allows the trains to operate on steep grades above 10%, which is the maximum for friction-based rail. So basically, it's a train that can go up a mountain. Long story short. The legislators were so skeptical about the feasibility of the project that they told the engineer who built it that he could, quote, build the railway to the moon.
Oh.
The Appalachian Mountain Club, which was founded in 1876 and opened the first hut as a shelter to hikers and researchers in 1889. The Madison Spring Hut sits up 4,800 feet between Mount Adams and Mount Madison. During the first half of the 1900s, the club built several more huts and hired a caretaker, which over the years evolved into a 5 to 11 crew members, but crew is spelled CROO.
Interesting. Okay.
So I don't know why. I probably could have looked it up, but I didn't. So
That's okay.
there you go. The huts sleep between 36 and 90 people, with the Lake of the
Wow.
Clouds sleeping the most people. Experienced hikers can partake in the Presidential Traverse, which hits the major summits and is around a 19-mile hike along the Presidential Ridge. It can be done in a single day during the summer and encompasses over 8,500 feet or 2,600 meters in elevation gain, like total.
Right.
Okay. Reports of the presence and other paranormal experiences have been reported all throughout the area of Mount Washington beginning in the 1800s, with the men creating the trails and has steadily grown throughout the decades. Some decades see more activity than others, but people would report hearing door slams, footsteps down empty hallways, and some would even see faces in windows and mirrors.
Ew. We know we hate that.
I know, that's why I was like, I'm going to scare her. There are many theories about who or what the presence embodies. One such theory is the legend of a possible curse that an Indian chief had placed upon the mountain right before he died. Before I can share the stories and experience people had with the presence, you need to know some of the tragedies that plagued these mountains.
Of course.
So we begin, of course, with Chief Passaconway's ride to heaven. The Native American legend tells of the passing of Chief Passaconway, who was the chief of the Pennacook band of Abenakis.
Nailed it.
That's how I read it in my head, so I hope to God that's right. The legend goes that a pack of black wolves came to the chief's hut, but pulling a sled, and the chief climbed onto the sled, and the wolves brought the chief up the mountain and into heaven. And according to the White Song Sojourn blog, Chief Passaconway was an actual chief who may have died in the early 1700s. His village was in what is now present-day Manchester, New Hampshire.
Manchester.
The Abenakis called Mount Washington Agiochuk or Agiokukchuk, meaning the place of the Great Spirit or the place of the concealed one, which makes sense because it's the top of a mountain. You can't see it.
Right.
They believed it was home to one of the great spirits and would never climb to the summit out of respect, which, of course, the white man did not.
Yep. No regard at all.
Chief Passaconway was a well-known medicine man. The chief had an immense knowledge of medical plants and was a great healer, so much so that people would travel from Europe to ask for his expertise, not just the people invading his land. The chief had always been very welcoming and friendly with his European visitors and settlers, but as the settlers continued north, settling on the sacred land, the chief began to despise them. Fair.
Very fair.
Some legends say that just before the chief died, he uttered a curse that would come back from the dead and, quote, make havoc on the white man in revenge for their betrayal.
Can't say I blame him.
Mm-mm. Side note, for one of my classes, I have to read like a young adult novel and like do kind of like a here's how you could use it type of thing. So this book I'm reading is of a boy who he's Cherokee. And it's about his mom who goes missing and like has a whole bunch of themes to it, blah, blah, blah. The point being, the other part I'm doing for my project, I'm doing the time period of like, for fifth grade history, they need to know the time of like when Andrew Jackson was president and like all that. And so I'm reading all of these like fascinating things about history that I obviously didn't know before. And it's just fascinating. There's so many, like I have found so many books on like Indigenous people and like not just the basic social studies textbook kind of thing, like actual stories of people. And it's just really fascinating. And so I feel like I've learned so much about Native American history in the last like 4 days.
Amazing.
So I just wanted to share. Okay. So could the stories you're about to hear of the disappearances and deaths be attributed to the curse placed upon the mountain from Chief Passaconway? Maybe. But people don't always have an experience with the presence. Some of the experiences are with other travelers who met an untimely demise while hiking the dangerous mountain range. So aside from the curse placed on the mountains, there are a few other deaths and disappearances that possibly contribute to the spookiness throughout Mount Washington. The first person to die from hiking on Mount Washington was 29-year-old Frederick Strickland. In October of 1849, Frederick was able to reach the summit despite the harsh weather conditions. Unfortunately, he got lost on his way back down and died from hypothermia. Reporting deaths on the mountain began this year, so there was no telling how many more lives were taken by the mountains that went unreported.
I don't know why, but that last name of his sounded very familiar.
Strickland?
Yeah.
Costco is Kirkland.
No, I don't think that's it.
I think there's an actor with the last name Strickland.
I don't know.
Lizzie Bourne was 23 years old when she set out to reach the Tip Top House in 1855. So that was like one of the huts.
Okay.
I don't know if it was technically considered a hut yet, but it was like some sort of lodge. In 1855, with her uncle and cousin, Lizzie had a heart condition, but she was determined to make it to the house to see the sunrise. Other women in the 19th century were climbing the mountain in full skirts, petticoats, and pantaloons.
Jeez.
Despite being warned about bad weather, they still set out on their hike. The clouds made the trail very difficult to see, and the wind and snow made the skirts soaked and heavier.
Oh.
Lizzie was having trouble, so they decided to try and shelter behind a small pile of stones. Lizzie Bourne died from hypothermia and never made it to the tip-top house. And when the clouds cleared, it was revealed that the tip-top house was only a few hundred feet from where Lizzie died. Today, there is a monument by the Cog Railway that commemorates the spot where she died. This next tragedy predates Frederick and Lizzie, but it did not occur from hiking Mount Washington. So in 1826, Sam Wiley decided to settle his family at the base of the mountains in the White Mountain Range. During a violent rainstorm, Wiley feared his family would fall victim to mudslides, so they fled from their home to a nearby stone structure that they had built in the event of a mudslide. Unfortunately, the mudslide split in two and completely missed the house, but destroyed the refuge and killing the entire family.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, my God. That's the worst luck.
Yes. One
Sounds
source
like it's cursed.
One source I read said that the only family members who were not recovered were the Wiley children, and it is said that the children are now who possibly haunt what is now known as Mount Wiley, the surrounding mountains. QB. One of the more well-known stories to avid mountaineers is that of William Curtis and Alan Ormsby. The two men set off for their hike to the Summit House for AMC's annual meeting. On June 30th, 1900, the two men began their hike up Mount Eisenhower, but were soon hit with a fierce storm. They had continued to climb, and they came across two hikers who said that the weather was bad and they shouldn't continue. A register at one of the summit houses reported, quote, rain clouds with wind 60 miles per hour. Cold.
Yeah.
Like, damn straight. William was an accomplished hiker. He had 18 years experience under his 63-year-old belt. Alice was a novice hiker to the White Mountains and had just completed his first hike the week before on other ranges in the White Mountains. The weather continued to worsen, and the men tried to take refuge in a scrub spruce along the Crawford. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Or like a big bush.
Yeah.
Along the Crawford Path near the Mount Monroe summit. The men's absence at the meeting caused anxiety among the other members. Two respected guides, Byron and Thaddeus Lowe, set out in search of the men, but were quickly turned back by the terrible weather. They found William Curtis's body near the spruce the following morning. Alan Ormsby at some point had continued on and made it within sight of the summit buildings on Mount Washington. Oh. His body was discovered there the next afternoon. Some reports I read said that there was an emergency shelter built between Mount Monroe and Mount Washington to avoid another tragedy such as this one.
Right.
But the shelter has been removed, and I'm pretty sure the Lake of the Clouds is now what sits between those two mountains as a place, as like a more official refuge, because it's bigger. Right. So people usually stay there, and then like it's like the next part's like, okay, you got the hike to the summit, which is rough in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Across from the information desk at the Mount Washington summit is a framed casualties of Mount Washington list of 161. 161 known deaths since the state park began recording them in 1849. The most common deaths are falls, which is 44, hypothermia or weather exposure, 33, and heart attacks, 23.
Goodness.
There are a few, however, that say indirectly associated with Mount Washington. Meaning what? Well, some of those might be suicides. People have gone off into the mountains purposefully unprepared in order for the elements to take their lives. However, on the list from Wikipedia, there is one singular unsolved murder. One.
Uh-huh.
On November 15, 2001, Louise Chaput drove from Quebec, Canada to Pinkham's Grant, where she reserved a room at the Joe Dodd Lodge. The Joe Dodd Lodge.
Joe Dodd Lodge.
Joe Dodd Lodge. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Which was part of the AMC's visitor center. She always loved the outdoors and hiking, particularly Mount Washington Valley. Around 3 p.m., she asked one of the AMC workers for directions to an area for a short hike that would get her back around dusk. The worker suggested Lost Pond Trail, which was right across the street from the lodge. Louise set out on her hike and was never seen alive again. When she failed to return home the following Monday, her family called police to report her missing. Police found her car near where she was staying, but the car keys were missing, but the car was still there.
Yeah.
So just the keys. Louise had brought 2 backpacks for hiking, and the larger of the 2 were missing. However, her hiking shoes, water, and chocolate, which were things that she always brought with her, were still in the car. 2 days after she was reported missing, her body was found with multiple stab wounds on Thanksgiving Day. Associate Attorney General Jeffrey Strelitzin, I only
Wait,
say
what's
his
his
name
name?
once. Jeffrey Strelitzin.
And who is he?
He's the Associate Attorney General.
I talked about him.
Did you really?
Yes.
How did you say his last name?
I can't remember, but yeah, I definitely talked about him because I remember I had difficulty with his name as well.
Okay, well, go with whatever Lauren said.
Oh my God, that's wild.
That is weird. I thought the name sounded familiar, but I was like, no, I don't know if that's how you say the last name.
Neither of us know.
No. Jeffrey told reporters, quote, I remember she was quite a ways off the trail. I remember that we walked into where her body was, and it was quite a distance off the trail. Police working the case said someone forced her off the trail and brought her into a clearing that was 100 yards away. They also said that all evidence indicates that it was a random attack and the killer was likely someone from the area, but that Louise Chaput didn't know. To this day, police haven't been able to name any suspects or have any evidence that might lead to her killer. Not only are there unsolved murders, but there are plenty of unsolved disappearances. In some areas, hikers have come across human remains that are 10 or 20 years old. In 2004, in another area of the White Mountains, a hiker came across the remains of Stephen Romines. Stephen was from Massachusetts and had been reported missing in October of 1984. In 1994, a group of hikers discovered the remains of a woman who had been missing for 9 years prior to their discovery.
Oh my gosh.
One of the more intriguing unsolved missing person cases that is of Kevin Race. Kevin was reported missing from a hike on Mount Washington on September 10th, 2007. His vehicle was found at the AMC parking lot in Pinkham Notch, and a note at his residence that said, quote, he was looking for his final resting place.
Oh.
Now, before you
or
Race Race is being indicted in Lincoln County on 4 counts of theft by unauthorized taking and being sued by his business partner. When Race failed to show up for court after being released on bail, a warrant for his arrest was issued. Numerous searches by multiple agencies have come up empty, and as of today, Race is still missing and no body has ever been discovered. So did he actually feel remorse for what he did and take his own life, or was this an elaborate escape from justice?
Interesting.
Aside from Mount Washington being a dangerous and deadly obstacle, people have reported strange, scary, and ominous activity all throughout the White Mountains.
Ooh.
You know, I have such a great vocabulary, but I can't read half these words.
I know what these words are. I just can't say them.
Sounds good in my head. So, a story from the 1960s about the presence at the Lake of the Clouds comes from the hut master. He was finishing up a report one Sunday night, and he was sitting by himself at the table in the kitchen with the hut cat. The two enjoyed each other's company. The two enjoyed each other's company as the wind howled outside. Gas lamps would hiss quietly. Suddenly, the door to the basement opened and closed, followed by footsteps of a person coming up the stairs. However, when the hut master and hut cat looked towards the top of the basement stairs, there was no one in sight.
Of course not.
The cat's eyes were bugging out, his fur straight up, and his back arched with an expression of terror. The hut master ran into one of the rooms and slammed the door behind him, barricading himself in the room, leaving the poor cat to fend for itself.
Oh, you always bring the animals with you.
I know. Other more recent accounts of the presence, quote, I've been there when the door to the basement is open and I cannot approach it. I get this feeling that there are many souls down there, but not all of them are benevolent.
And not all of them are benevolent?
Correct.
Oh.
Doesn't benevolent
mean good?
It does. Okay, right.
Yes, so saying not all of them are good.
Right. Okay.
Malevolent is that one.
Right. Which makes sense because like malice, when you do something.
And maleficent.
And in Spanish, mal means bad.
Yeah, look at that.
But words are cool.
Oh, yeah. Entomology. No, etymology. Entomology is studying bugs. Etymology is words.
Or morphology, the parts of words. I'm smart now, right? I'm in
I'm
school
smart.
again.
I'm real smart.
I'm real smart. Super smart. Another hiker felt the presence while hiking the Crawford Path, saying, quote, "I've been followed by ghosts multiple times in the Crawford Path during the winter above the tree line. I can hear their footsteps crunching in the snow. If I stop quickly, I hear a few more steps and then it stops. Once in a while, walking on Crawford Path, I saw a woman in front of me. She was dressed in period clothing circa the 19th century. She didn't move, but stood and watched me walk by. Once by her, I turned around and she was gone."
Ew.
Even on different trails, hikers can feel the presence. One hiker shared in 2017, "I started towards the cars. They hiked up Wiley to see the sunrise, and something just didn't feel right. I did not feel alone despite being the only one in the tiny area of the lookout and not seeing anyone since I had been there. It felt like there was a set of eyes on me just off the trail, and that feeling persisted for about 100 yards. Something compelled me to stop and just say, 'Hello? Who's there?' Into the darkness. The response was an unmistakable shrill of laughter a child makes. The
No.
res- The response was instantaneous upon my question. That might have been the fastest known descent of Wiley in history. I felt eyes following me the entire way to the car, a very odd and unique experience."
Oh
How are
God,
you
no.
feeling?
I don't like that.
How are you feeling? How did I do? You feeling nervous?
A little bit, a little bit.
Okay, cool. Good. Right where I want you. So we'll finish up with the most well-known story from the Lake of the Clouds, which comes from an AMC worker named George. George was sent to the Lake of the Clouds Clut. Damn, I'm ruining it. George was sent to the Lake of the Clouds hut on Mount Washington in the springtime to check out the winter damage. He brought with him a two-way radio to report back with any special equipment needed before the hut was opened. Because of the harsh winters and immense wind speeds, the windows are always boarded up tight and secure. When George arrived, he did not find anything out of the ordinary. Later that afternoon, the men on the crew had tried contacting George to see if he made it safely, but George did not answer. At first, the crew wasn't too worried, thinking maybe George went for a little hike to check on other things along the trail. By 8 p.m., they tried again, and there was still no response from George. Fearing something went wrong, the crew planned out an early morning search of the hut to see if George was okay. When they arrived at the hut the next morning, it appeared as if George made it safely. His backpack and gear laid open near the dining room floor, and his radio was on the table and still powered on. The men called out for him, but there was no answer. The men began to search in and around the hut for any sign of George. The windows were still boarded up, which made the hut feel eerily dark. All of a sudden, someone heard a noise, a whimper, coming from below the kitchen sink. When they went to investigate, they found George shaking terribly and crouching under the sink. His fists had tightly clutched an axe, and he pleaded with his crewmates, "Just please, get me the hell out of here. Just get me out of here." The men got George out of the cabinet and back down to the base, where an ambulance was waiting for him, and as soon as he reached the bottom. George wouldn't tell anyone what happened to him that night. The men in the crew thought maybe he had a run with some kind of wild animal like a wolf or a bear. After weeks of recovering, George finally told a close confidant what happened that night. This was his story. Dun, dun. After George got to the hut, he was exhausted and extremely hungry. He unlocked the padlocks on the hut doors and went inside to the large dining hall. He sat on the tables and began to take account of his food supplies.
Wait, and so you say this hut is used by like a couple other people, like different people can use this if they need to?
Yes, but it's been closed for the winter, and George works there and is like, they're going up to open it.
Okay, because I was wondering how he would have had like keys to padlocks.
Yeah, George, the AMC worker.
Right, but it didn't click. Okay.
I can see that.
Wow, rude.
You just cut me off to throw off the vibe of the story.
You threw off the Emperor's groove.
See, if you had... He unlocked the padlocks on the hut doors and went inside to the large dining hall. He sat on one of the tables and began to take account of his food supplies. He was going to radio down to the crew as soon as he was able to rest and catch his breath. George suddenly got a sense that he wasn't alone. He could feel a presence standing right behind him, as if someone was about to put their hands on his shoulders.
Oh. Oh.
George leapt from his seat and quickly turned around. There, peering at him from the dining room window, was a face. A, quote, distorted, grotesque face pressed into the glass of the dining room window panes. Remember, the windows are still boarded up from the winter. George began to back away in horror, and as he did, he noticed that the same face was in every single window pane, glaring at him. At one
No.
point, the face seemed to melt through the glass and into the room where he was standing. That's the last thing George remembers about that night, and he never returned to the hut or the AMC crew again.
Ew, I did get some chills.
Mic fucking drop, baby. I would have killed it in radio. Okay, so I do want to finish this with a non-spooky story, one that will hopefully make your heart happy and give you a sense of hope.
Oh, okay.
Pam Bales went for a hike in 2010 along the Jewel Trail at the base of Mount Washington. She had done this hike plenty of times before. She worked for the Pemigewasset
Nailed it.
Pemigewasset Valley Search and Rescue Team for the last 5 years. The mountains were both her playground and her office. At about 5,000 feet up, the wind had picked up and Pam was adding layers to her hiking outfit. At about 5,500 feet, she noticed fresh footprints in the snow just off the trail. Pam immediately grew concerned because the tracks weren't made by someone wearing hiking boots, but sneakers.
Oh, okay.
And given how high up they were, sneakers, not safe.
Right.
And anyone who'd probably be that high up, novice or not, you're not going to be...
Right,
Yeah.
you'd be prepared.
Yeah. As Pam followed the footprints, she found a man with his back against a boulder. He was covered in a layer of snow, wearing a thin jacket, a t-shirt, and soaked pants. When Pam called out to him, he didn't respond. And as she got closer, she could see he was still breathing, but his skin looked porcelain, and he had a vacant expression. Pam began to grab her extra layers and get the man out of his wet clothes. She put hand warmers in his shirt and fed him hot chocolate from her thermos. He barely acknowledged her presence and wouldn't say much more than a groan when she asked him questions. She decided to call him John, because he wouldn't say his name.
Right.
And together they made their way back down the mountain. They made the slow descent, and Pam sang 60s hits to remind John that she was still there and to boost her own morale.
Aww.
At one point, he sat down in the snow, looking like he was going to give up, and Pam said, quote, "We're in this together." After 6 hours, they made it to the parking lot where Pam warmed up John's clothes with her car heater. He gave back the layers that she had lent him, and with hardly a word, he drove off.
Wow.
Pam was left thoroughly confused. She had a million questions about what just happened and no way to get them answered. A few days later, a letter arrived at the SAR headquarters, Search and Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the story is from the words of Pam herself. This is the letter. I hope this reaches the right group of rescuers, it read. I was called John. On Sunday, October 17th, I went up my favorite trail, Jewel, to end my life. Weather was to be bad. I paused and started again. It took a few tries to get through the whole letter. Next thing I knew, this lady was talking to me, he wrote. I said to leave me and get going, but she wouldn't. He had considered running off, but thought I might follow and didn't want to harm anyone else. With all that has been going wrong in my life, it didn't matter to me, but I did to Pam. Inside, he had tucked a small donation. If she's an example of your organization and professionalism, you must be the best group around. I have a new direction thanks to wonderful people like yourselves. And the letter was signed John. I never found out exactly who I helped that day, but I like to think he's out there somewhere enjoying his second chance.
Oh, that's sweet.
So I wanted to share this story for many reasons. The biggest being how much of a difference an act of kindness can make in someone's life. For some, that act of kindness can be the difference of life or death. And above all else, remember that someone out there cares that you exist, even when it may feel like no one does. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or ideations, you can call or text the number 988, which is the number for the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. And that, my friends, is the stories of Mount Washington and the Lake of the Cloud hut.
Wow. We need your friend to go back and find something scary so we can report back even more stories.
I was like thinking to myself, I said to my mom, I was like, Mom, if I had had this like experience on top of this story, I would have been crowned queen of stories. Because not only do I have disappearances, unsolved murders, I got ghosts, I got presences, and I have a listener experience. Like, oh. But
Your
when I
friend
asked
failed
her
you.
I asked her on Tuesday, and I said, well, you have between now and Thursday to go back and tell me what
And I
happened.
take it she did not go back. That's really rude of her.
I thought so too. I said, wow, you're really letting me down. And she goes, I know.
At least you acknowledge it.
Right?
Oh, well, that
So,
was
yeah.
good. You did have everything that makes a good story in that one.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And did I
You know
freak you
I
out
love
a
my
little bit?
disappearances. A little bit, not gonna lie. I got chills at the end of that one.
I almost put George's story first, but then I was like, no, I'm going to put
No,
it last. End
that's
of
what
the
we'll
bed.
end on.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Ew, yeah, don't like the faces and all of the window panes. Not a fan of that one at all.
No, not at all. But it was great because I didn't have to watch a single fucking video.
Amazing.
I could just read all of this. I love
That's
it.
the most important thing.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone. If the audio is still a little funky, we really apologize. We've been trying our best. But yes, so thank you for listening.
Yes.
We
Thank
hope we'll
you.
get better at this. Follow
Hopefully.
us on everything.
All
You know
the
the
things.
spiel.
You know the deal.
All right?
Spiel.
Spiel, all the things. So stay
All the
scary.
things. Stay safe.